Commander had served in the Hegemony Fleet for 43 years. In all that time, he had never seen his instruments malfunction like this. The sensors showed a gravitational distortion moving through space, but there was nothing there. No heat signature, no electromagnetic emissions, no mass readings. Just a ripple in the fabric of reality itself, like watching something invisible push through water. "Tactical, verify those readings," he ordered, his three eyes fixed on the display. The tactical officer worked his console frantically. "Commander, I've run diagnostics twice. The equipment is functioning normally. There's definitely something out there, but it's not registering on any of our detection systems. It's like it exists and doesn't exist at the same time." Felt his skin bristle. They had conquered half their sector through superior technology and ruthless efficiency. Their sensor arrays could detect a single ship's drive signature from 3 light-years away. They could track stealth vessels through subspace. But this was impossible. "All ships defensive formation," he commanded. "Weapons hot. Whatever that is, we're not taking chances." His fleet of 12 warships moved into position, their weapons charging. The gravitational ripple passed directly through the center of their formation. For a moment, nothing happened. Then 3 of his ships went dark. Their running lights vanished. Their engines cut out. Their shields collapsed. They simply became dead metal floating in the void. "Open a channel to those ships," demanded. "Now." The communications officer looked up with confusion on her face. "I have them, Commander. The crews are alive and unharmed, but they report total systems failure. Everything is offline. Reactors, life support backup, even basic electrical systems. It's all just dead." Before could respond, every screen in the fleet lit up simultaneously. A human woman appeared on the displays. She had dark hair pulled back in a military style, and she wore a uniform that didn't recognize. Her expression was calm, almost pleasant, as if she were greeting old friends rather than addressing a heavily armed battle fleet. "Good evening," she said in perfect galactic common. "My name is Captain of the United Human Stellar Vessel Revenant. I apologize for the dramatic entrance, but I needed to ensure I had your complete attention. Your 3 disabled ships will have their systems restored in approximately 1 hour. Their crews are in no danger. Consider this a demonstration of capability, not an act of war." His mandibles clicked together in shock. "Human, that's impossible. Your species is quarantined in the Sol system, the quantum barrier." "The quantum barrier is still in place," interrupted gently. "We haven't broken it or disabled it. We simply learned to work around it. You see, Commander, your people locked humanity away for 287 years. During that time, you assumed we would either destroy ourselves or remain primitive. You were wrong on both counts." The captain's image shifted, and she brought up a holographic display. It showed the Sol system, surrounded by the shimmering wall of quantum energy that had imprisoned humanity for nearly 3 centuries. Then the image zoomed out, showing dozens of ships passing through the barrier as if it wasn't there at all. "We've been watching you," continued. "All of you. The Galactic Council, the Hegemony, the Collective, every species that voted to lock us away and forget about us. We know what you did to our colony ships. We know about 442B. We know about the experiments. We know everything." Felt his primary heart skip a beat. 442B was classified at the highest levels. The human colony there had been intercepted before the quarantine was established. The Council had decided that studying human biology and psychology would be useful for understanding the species they were imprisoning. The official record stated that the colony had suffered a tragic systems failure. The truth was far darker. "You're bluffing," said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Even if you escaped Sol, you couldn't possibly have accessed our classified networks." Smiled sadly. "Commander, I'm currently transmitting this conversation through your own secure communications array. I've accessed your personal logs, your military databases, and your government's most secret files. I know about your daughter's upcoming joining ceremony on Prime. I know about the tactical briefing you attended last month regarding contingency plans for exterminating humanity if we ever escaped containment. I know what you had for breakfast this morning. If we wanted to harm you or your crew, you would already be dead. We're not here for revenge, Commander. We're here for accountability. The transmission ended. The image of Captain faded, leaving staring at blank screens. Around him, his bridge crew sat in stunned silence. The impossible had just happened. Humanity, the species that had barely achieved fusion drive technology when they were quarantined, had just casually demonstrated capabilities beyond anything in the known galaxy. "Get me High Command," said quietly. "Tell them we have a situation. Tell them the humans are out." The message that Captain sent to Commander was only the first. Within hours, every major government in the galaxy received similar transmissions. The content varied, but the message was clear. Humanity knew what had been done to them. Humanity had capabilities that made them effectively unstoppable, and humanity was very, very disappointed in the galactic community. On the Council of X, High Arbiter convened an emergency session. The massive chamber was filled with representatives from 47 species, all talking at once, all demanding answers. Had to activate the sonic dampeners 3 times before order was restored. "Silence," he roared, his vocal sacs inflating with the effort. "We will address this crisis systematically. First, can someone explain to me how a quarantined species developed technology that makes our most advanced stealth systems look like primitive signal fires?" The head of Galactic Intelligence, a named Hun, stood slowly. Her usual confidence was notably absent. "High Arbiter, we are still analyzing the data, but preliminary reports suggest that the humans have developed something entirely new. They're not using conventional stealth technology. They're manipulating spacetime itself, creating a field that places their ships slightly out of phase with normal reality. It's not invisibility, it's dimensional displacement." A murmur ran through the chamber. Several representatives began shouting questions, raised his hand for quiet. "How is that possible?" he asked. "Such technology would require centuries of research and resources we know they don't have." "That's precisely what they did have, High Arbiter," Hun replied. "Centuries. We gave them 287 years of isolation, 287 years with nothing to do but advance their science and prepare for this moment. We assumed they would stagnate or destroy themselves. Instead, they focused entirely on breaking free. And because they were cut off from galactic trade and technology, they couldn't take shortcuts. They had to develop everything from first principles, which led them down theoretical pathways that established science had abandoned ago." "Are you telling me," said slowly, "that by isolating them, we accidentally created the perfect conditions for unprecedented technological advancement?" "Yes, High Arbiter, and there's more. The quantum barrier is still intact. Our instruments confirm it hasn't been breached or damaged. Somehow, they found a way through it without breaking it. That means if we reinforce the barrier or modify it, they'll likely just adapt their method." Another representative stood. It was Ambassador of the Collective, his scales gleaming under the chamber lights. This human captain mentioned experiments. She mentioned 442B. Those are classified operations. How much do they know? Hun's expression became grim. "Everything, Ambassador. We've detected intrusions into classified databases across every major government. They've accessed files that are supposed to be air-gapped from any network, stored in facilities with no digital connections whatsoever. We don't know how they did it, but they have documentation of every decision, every experiment, every contingency plan. They know about the biological weapons research. They know about the children." The chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives jumped to their feet, shouting denials or demanding explanations. Some species had not been aware of the extent of the Council's actions regarding humanity. Others had participated and were now realizing that their crimes were no longer secret. Felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. The 442B incident had been his predecessor's decision, but he had reviewed the files when he took office. The human colony ship had carried 2,000 people, including 400 children. The council had intercepted it before the quarantine was established and decided the colonists would be useful test subjects. The experiments had lasted for 7 years before the last human died. "We need to mobilize the fleet," someone shouted. "Hunt these humans down before they can do more damage." "Hunt them with what?" Hun shot back. "We can't detect them, we can't track them, we can't target them. They've disabled military vessels, accessed our most secure systems, and demonstrated the ability to strike anywhere without warning. And they haven't killed anyone yet. Don't you understand what that means? They have total military superiority and they're showing restraint. If we attack them, that restraint might end." Raised his hand again. The chamber gradually fell silent. "Does anyone have any idea how many ships they have?" "No, High Arbiter," Hun said. "We've detected gravitational anomalies in 17 different sectors simultaneously, but that could be one ship moving very quickly or 17 ships moving slowly. We simply don't know." "What do they want?" asked. "The captain said they weren't here for revenge. What are their demands?" As if in answer to his question, every display screen in the council chamber activated. Captain appeared, larger than life, looking down at the assembled representatives with calm, measuring eyes. "High Arbiter," she said, "representatives of the Galactic Council, I'm interrupting your emergency session because I want you to understand something important. Humanity isn't your enemy. We never were. You made us your enemy when you decided that our potential for violence justified our imprisonment. You made us your enemy when you experimented on our people. You made us your enemy when you discussed whether to exterminate us like vermin." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But we don't want to be your enemy. We want justice. We want accountability. And we want to make sure that what was done to us is never done to anyone else ever again. In the coming days, you're going to see more demonstrations of what we can do. You're going to learn exactly what you created when you locked us away and gave us centuries to prepare. And then we're going to talk about how to fix this, how to build something better." The transmission ended. The council chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, the representatives began to understand the true scope of their situation. They had not just failed to contain humanity. They had created the very thing they feared most, a unified, technologically superior species with both the capability and justification to tear the entire galactic order apart. And that species was asking for talks instead of war, which somehow made the situation even more terrifying. Within 48 hours of Captain's first transmission, the galaxy learned that the Revenant was not alone. Reports flooded in from across civilized space at an alarming rate. A military base on the frontier went completely dark for 6 hours, its entire weapons grid mysteriously offline. When systems came back up, the base commander found a data packet on his personal terminal containing detailed schematics of his own facility, marked with every structural weakness and security flaw. The message attached was simple: "We were here, you never knew." The collective discovered that 3 of their hidden supply depots, locations known only to their highest military command, had been quietly accessed. Nothing was taken. Nothing was damaged. But someone had downloaded the complete inventory of each facility and left behind a single file, a list of coordinates for 17 more secret bases that the collective thought were perfectly concealed. On the Empress herself received a personal visit. Her yacht, protected by the most advanced security systems money could buy and surrounded by a fleet of guard ships, was boarded during a diplomatic cruise. No alarms sounded. No guards noticed. The Empress only realized something was wrong when she found a handwritten note on her private quarters pillow, written in perfect script. "Your security failed. We chose not to harm you. Remember this kindness." The panic this caused was immediate and profound. If humans could reach an empress in the heart of her own fleet, if they could access facilities that were supposed to be impossible to find, then nowhere was safe. No one was safe. The galaxy's most powerful governments suddenly felt very vulnerable. Captain continued her broadcasts, and each one was more damaging than the last. She didn't just tell the galaxy about the Council's crimes. She showed them footage of human colonists being used as test subjects for biological weapons, audio recordings of Council members casually discussing whether humanity should be neutered as a species or eliminated when convenient, documents proving that the 442b colony hadn't suffered a systems failure at all, but had been deliberately captured and experimented on for years. The footage from 442b was particularly devastating. It showed human children, some no older than 5 or 6, confined in research cells. It showed scientists taking samples, testing new technologies, treating living beings like laboratory animals. The galaxy watched these recordings and felt collective shame. Even species that had not participated in the experiments felt sick at what had been done in the name of security and science. Not all species had supported the quarantine. The Commonwealth had abstained from the vote centuries ago, arguing that collective punishment of an entire species was morally wrong. The Republic had voted against it, though they were a small species with little political power and had been overruled. These species received different messages from the humans. The Prime Minister woke one morning to find a detailed technical manual on his secure terminal. It was a complete analysis of the quantum barrier, including several methods to disable it or pass through it. The accompanying message read, "We know you tried to help us. We remember our friends. If you wish to discuss cooperation and mutual benefit, we are willing to talk." The Republic's ambassador received a similar overture, along with something unexpected: the complete genetic profiles of the 3 exploration crews that had disappeared in the outer reaches 50 years ago. The humans had somehow found what had happened to them. The data showed that they had encountered a hostile species and been killed. The humans had even included the coordinates of the ship's wreckage so they could retrieve their lost people and give them proper funerals. These gestures made it clear that humanity was not operating on blind revenge. They were distinguishing between enemies and those who had been powerless to help. They were building alliances while systematically dismantling the power structure that had imprisoned them. Meanwhile, the military fleets of the Council species were mobilizing. The hegemony sent 3 full battle groups to patrol their core systems. The collective activated every defense platform they had. The Empire recalled their scattered forces and established a defensive perimeter around there. It was the largest military mobilization in galactic history. It was also completely pointless. Admiral of the commanded the largest of the battle groups, over 200 ships arranged in a defensive sphere around Prime. He had orders to destroy any human vessel on sight, regardless of the political consequences. He had the firepower to level a planet. He had sensors that could supposedly detect a mosquito in a meteor shower. He had every advantage except the one that mattered. The humans found him first. Was reviewing tactical displays when his flagship's shield simply vanished. Not damaged, not overwhelmed, just gone. Before he could react, weapons systems across his entire fleet went offline. 200 warships, the pride of the military, reduced to helpless targets in less than 3 seconds. Then Captain's voice came over the fleet-wide channel. "Admiral, I'm currently sitting in your ready room, though your sensors don't know I'm here. I could have destroyed your fleet. I could have killed you personally. I chose not to. Your shields and weapons will be restored in 10 minutes. I recommend you spend that time reconsidering your orders." Stormed into his ready room, weapon drawn, but found it empty. Except it wasn't empty, he realized. Someone was there, invisible, watching him. He could feel eyes on him even though he could see nothing. The feeling was deeply unsettling. "Why are you doing this?" he demanded to the empty room. "Why not just destroy us and be done with it?" "Because," his voice came from everywhere and nowhere, "we're not monsters. We're not the savage, violent species you convinced yourselves we were. Yes, we fought among ourselves before the quarantine. Yes, we had wars, but we were growing, learning, evolving. You didn't give us the chance to prove we could be better. You locked us away and forgot about us. But we didn't forget about you." "Then what do you want?" asked. "We want you to face what you've done. We want the people responsible for the experiments, for 442B, for all of it, to answer for their crimes. We want the council restructured so this never happens to anyone else. And we want a place at the table as equals, not as prisoners or threats." "The council will never agree to that," said. "Then the council will learn what it means to have humanity as an enemy instead of as disappointed survivors seeking justice," replied. "But I don't think it will come to that, because we're about to show the galaxy something they need to see." Across civilized space, on every major news network, on every government channel, on every public display screen, the same broadcast began. It showed the Sol system from orbit, the quantum barrier still in place, still glowing with the energy that had confined humanity for so long. Then the view pulled back, and the galaxy saw what had been hidden. Ships, hundreds of them, thousands of them, the entire human fleet, hanging in formation just beyond the barrier, invisible to sensors but now revealing themselves visually. They ranged from small, sleek vessels no bigger than shuttles to massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything in the Council's arsenal. Each one represented decades of work, centuries of preparation, and a level of technological advancement that made the rest of the galaxy look primitive by comparison. "This is Ambassador Way of Earth," an elderly human man said, appearing on the broadcast. His face was weathered, his hair white, but his eyes were sharp and clear. "I was 7 years old when the quantum barrier was activated. I am now 294. I have lived my entire life in a cage, watching the stars and knowing that my people were forbidden from reaching them. I have watched generations grow old and die without ever setting foot on worlds that should have been ours to explore." Paused, his expression hardening. "But we did not waste that time. We built, we researched, we prepared, and we waited for the right moment. That moment is now. The fleet you see represents the collective will of humanity, our determination to be free and our refusal to be forgotten." The camera angle changed, showing different ships in detail. Each one was a masterpiece of engineering, sleek and deadly and utterly alien to galactic design principles. "We don't want war," continued. "We want justice. We want the people who authorized the experiments on human subjects to stand trial. We want reparations for the centuries stolen from us. We want full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and privileges. And we want binding laws established that prevent any species from ever being treated the way we were treated." "These are our terms," said. "They are not negotiable. They are not suggestions. They are the price of 3 centuries of wrongful imprisonment and the murder of innocent people. You have 1 week to respond. If the Council refuses, we will take what we deserve by force. We would prefer peace, but we are prepared for war." The broadcast ended. The galaxy reeled from the revelation. The humans hadn't just escaped their cage. They had used their time in isolation to become the most advanced military power in known space, and they were offering one chance at a peaceful resolution. High Arbiter called another emergency council session. This time, there was no chaos, no shouting. There was only grim silence as the representatives absorbed what they had seen. "They have us," said quietly, "completely and utterly. They can disable our defenses at will. They can access our most secure systems. They can strike anywhere without warning, and they have the military force to back up their threats." "We could fight," suggested one representative, though his voice lacked conviction. "Fight what?" Hun responded tiredly. "We can't even see them unless they want to be seen. They disabled Admiral's entire fleet in 3 seconds. 3 seconds. The largest battle group in the military, rendered helpless like children. If we fight, we lose. Completely." "Then what do you suggest?" asked Ambassador of the. "I suggest," said slowly, "that we accept their terms, all of them, because they're right. What we did was wrong. What we planned to do was worse. and they're showing remarkable restraint considering what we've done to them. You want us to just surrender, someone protested. I want us to survive, replied. And I want us to do better. These humans, they're not asking for our destruction. They're asking for accountability and a seat at the table. That's remarkably civilized for a species we've spent 3 centuries calling savage. The vote was called. It wasn't unanimous, but the majority was clear. The Council would accept humanity's terms and negotiate the details. The alternative was too terrible to contemplate. The negotiations took place aboard the diplomatic vessel Harmony's Light, chosen because they had opposed the quarantine and were trusted by both sides. The ship hung in neutral space, equidistant from Earth and the Council. Security was provided jointly by peacekeepers and human vessels that remained invisible but ever-present. High Arbiter arrived with a delegation of 20 council members, representing the major powers. They were escorted to a conference room that had been decorated to be comfortable for multiple species. Chairs of various sizes and configurations lined a massive table. The environmental controls had been carefully calibrated to accommodate everyone from the methane breathing to the high gravity. The humans were already waiting when the council delegation entered. Captain stood at attention, her uniform crisp and formal. Beside her was Ambassador Wei, leaning slightly on a cane but standing straight and proud. Behind them were 5 other humans, each wearing the same unfamiliar uniform, each watching the council members with expressions that were carefully neutral. But it was the Wei had arrived that caused to pause. She had simply been there when the doors opened. No ship had docked. No transporter signature had been detected. She had just appeared as if she had been in the room all along, waiting. It was another casual demonstration of the technology gap that now existed between humanity and everyone else. High Arbiter said, her voice polite but not warm. Thank you for coming, please be seated. The 2 groups sat across from each other. Noticed that the humans had positioned themselves so that they were slightly lower than the council members, a subtle gesture of non-aggression. But he also noticed that kept one hand near a device on her belt, a reminder that appearances could be deceiving. Let us begin, said. You have presented terms. We are here to discuss them. No, Wei said firmly. We are not here to discuss them. We are here for you to accept them. Discussion implies negotiation. There will be no negotiation. Ambassador, surely some aspects can be modified, began. Raised his hand. High Arbiter, let me be very clear. For 287 years, my people lived in a cage. We watched as our colony ships were intercepted and destroyed. We learned about 442B only because we managed to hack your databases and found the footage of what you did to those colonists. 2,000 people, 400 children, used as test subjects until they died. There is no modification, no negotiation, no compromise that makes that acceptable. He paused, his voice shaking slightly with controlled emotion. You want to negotiate? Fine. Let's negotiate about which council members should face trial for war crimes. Let's negotiate about whether the punishment should be imprisonment or execution. Let's negotiate about how many centuries of reparations you owe us. But the core terms, those are not up for discussion. The council members shifted uncomfortably. Ambassador of the spoke up. Ambassador, surely you understand that some of these terms are difficult for our governments to accept. The restructuring of the council, for instance, would require. I don't care what it requires, interrupted. The council, as it currently exists, authorized the imprisonment and experimentation on an entire species. That council has lost its legitimacy. It will be restructured, or it will be destroyed and replaced with something better. Those are your options. Leaned forward. Let me show you something that might help you understand our position. She activated a holographic projector in the center of the table. Images appeared, floating in the air between the 2 groups. They were pictures of children, human children ranging from toddlers to teenagers. Each image was marked with a date and location. 442B, the station experiments. The genetic research facility on Corridor 7. Children with monitoring devices attached to their heads. Children confined in cells. Children crying. These are not abstract crimes, said softly. These are real people who suffered real pain because your governments decided they were acceptable test subjects. This child here, she pointed to a girl of about 6, was named Sarah. She was Ambassador's cousin, 3 times removed. She died in the 442B facility at age 9 after 3 years of neurological experiments. His face remained impassive but could see the pain behind his eyes. This wasn't just politics for the humans. This was personal. This boy, continued, pointing to another image, was Johnston. He was 5 when he was used to test a new vaccine that your scientists thought might work on humans. It didn't. He suffered for 2 weeks before dying. This girl was. Enough, said quietly. We understand, we see what was done. Do you? Asked sharply. Because for centuries, your governments did these things and then filed reports calling them acceptable losses and necessary research. You treated us like we were animals, like we were things instead of people, and you never lost a moment of sleep over it. Some of us didn't know, protested one of the council members, a representative named. But your government did, replied, and you benefited from the research. The biodefense systems you sold to half the galaxy, those were developed using data from experiments on human subjects. The neural interface technology that made you rich, tested on human children. You may not have personally authorized it, representative, but you profited from it. The room fell silent. The truth of her words hung in the air like a weight. What you're asking for, said finally, is the complete dismantling of the current political order. No, corrected. What we're asking for is accountability and reform. The structure can remain, but the people who committed these crimes must face justice. The laws must be changed so this never happens again to anyone. And humanity must be given a full seat at the table, with veto power over any decision to quarantine or imprison a species. Veto power, objected. That would give humanity control over whether anyone else suffers what we suffered, finished. Yes, that's exactly what it would give us, and frankly, given the Council's track record, I'd say you need someone with veto power who actually values life and liberty. Closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Everything the humans were saying was reasonable, more than reasonable. They had every right to demand far more than they were asking for, but accepting these terms would fundamentally change how the galaxy was governed. On the other hand, refusing would mean war, and the humans had already demonstrated that they would win such a war easily. There is one thing I must ask, said. You have shown us your fleet. You have demonstrated your capabilities, but you have not killed anyone. Despite having every justification and opportunity for revenge, you have shown restraint. Why? And exchanged a look, then spoke. Because we are not you. We were quarantined because your governments decided we were too violent, too aggressive, too dangerous to be allowed among civilized species. You judged us based on our past, on our wars and conflicts, without giving us a chance to prove we could be better. But here's the thing, he continued. You were right to be cautious. Humanity does have a capacity for violence. We do have a history of war. But we also have a capacity for mercy, for justice, for building something better than what came before. By locking us away, you forced us to confront who we were and who we wanted to become. You gave us centuries to think about what kind of species we wanted to be when we finally broke free. And we chose, added, to be better than you were to us. We chose to seek justice instead of revenge. We chose to build instead of destroy. Not because we're weak, but because we're strong enough to choose mercy when vengeance would be easier. She leaned forward, her eyes intense. But make no mistake, High Arbiter, our mercy has limits. We are offering you one chance to do the right thing, one chance to face what you've done and make amends. If you refuse, if you force our hand, we will do what we must to protect ourselves and prevent this from happening to anyone else. and we will not enjoy it, but we will not hesitate. Looked at the faces around the table. He saw the determination in the humans' eyes. He saw the fear and uncertainty in his fellow council members. He thought about the fleet hanging in space, invisible and invincible. He thought about the children in the holographic images, children who had died for no reason other than the council's paranoia and cruelty. "I will take your terms to the full council," he said finally, "and I will recommend their acceptance, not because you are forcing us, but because you are right. What was done to your people was wrong. The system that allowed it to happen is broken. It needs to be fixed." "Will the council agree?" asked. "They will," said with more confidence than he felt, "because the alternative is war, and we all know how that would end, but also because some of us still believe in doing what's right, even when it's difficult." The negotiations continued for another week. The details were hammered out meticulously. The trials would be conducted by an independent tribunal that included representatives from both humanity and neutral species. The reparations would be paid over the next century in the form of full technology transfer, unrestricted access to galactic trade networks, and material support for human colonization efforts. The council would be restructured with humanity holding a permanent seat and veto power over quarantine decisions. Most importantly, new laws were established. No species could be collectively punished for the actions of individuals. No quarantine could be imposed without clear evidence of an immediate threat and exhaustive attempts at peaceful resolution. All sentient beings, regardless of species, had fundamental rights that could not be violated even in the name of security. The quantum barrier around Sol was dismantled in a ceremony broadcast across the galaxy. As the energy field collapsed, humanity's fleet emerged in full view for the first time. Thousands of ships, from tiny scouts to massive carriers, spread out into the galaxy they had been for so long. They did not come as conquerors. Human ships arrived at worlds that had opposed the quarantine-bearing gifts of technology and offers of friendship. They arrived at worlds that had participated in the experiments bearing demands for justice, but also offers of eventual reconciliation. They made it clear that they remembered both the wrongs done to them and the kindnesses, however small. The trials began 6 months later. 23 high-ranking officials were convicted of war crimes and sentenced to various punishments. The proceedings were fair, thorough, and open to public observation. The humans insisted on transparency, wanting the galaxy to see that justice could be served without revenge, that accountability did not require cruelty. Some in the galaxy grumbled about the new order. They resented humanity's power, their technology, their influence, but most recognized that the changes were necessary. The old system had been corrupt and cruel. The new one, with humanity as its conscience, at least had a chance of being better. Captain stood on the bridge of the Revenant looking out at Earth through The planet glowed blue and green and beautiful, no longer trapped behind a quantum wall. Human ships moved freely in orbit, coming and going as they pleased. The cage was gone. "Was it worth it?" her first officer asked. "All those years of preparation, all that work, just to end up negotiating instead of fighting?" Smiled, "Absolutely. We proved something important today. We proved that humanity could have its revenge if we wanted it. We had every justification, every opportunity, every capability. But we chose justice instead. We chose to build a better galaxy instead of burning down the old one. And if they hadn't agreed to our terms, then we would have done what was necessary," said calmly. "But I'm glad it didn't come to that. Violence should always be the last option, not the first. That's what makes us different from them. That's what makes us better." She turned away from set course for the council. "We have our first official session as council members tomorrow. Lots of work to do." "Yes, Captain," the first officer replied. On worlds across the galaxy, the story of humanity's return spread. It became a legend, a cautionary tale, a source of hope. Different species told different versions, but the core message remained the same. A species had been wrongly imprisoned, had suffered terribly, and had emerged not as monsters seeking revenge, but as advocates for justice and reform. The galaxy had feared what humanity might become. They had imagined a violent, vengeful species that would destroy everything in its path. Instead, they discovered a people who valued mercy and justice more than retribution. The stealth ship that had appeared was not a weapon of war. It was a messenger, carrying a simple message that echoed across the stars. Never again, not to us, not to anyone. And the galaxy, humbled and shamed but hopeful, began the hard work of building something better. Humanity took its seat at the council table, not as conquerors but as equals, as teachers, as living proof that even the deepest wrongs could lead to positive change if met with wisdom instead of rage. The cage was gone. The prisoners were free. And the galaxy learned that the most dangerous thing humanity possessed was not their technology or their ships or their weapons. It was their refusal to become the monsters they had been accused of being. It was their insistence on being better, even when being worse would have been justified. That, more than anything else, was what made humanity truly formidable, and the galaxy would never forget it.